address circumstances when allegations of underlying report of educator misconduct include conduct that appears to constitute Title IX violations, sexual harassment, or other discrimination. So this is a policy that's recommended for legal liability purposes. It's a good policy. It's just been revised now to include the Title IX portion of that. And what happens under educator misconduct is I have a fiduciary responsibility within 15 days to notify the Pennsylvania Department of Education of a series of events if an employee, teacher, or administrator commits a crime under certain code that I have to report it to Pennsylvania Department of Education. So all this does now, as the Title IX changes came down over the summer, this policy updates it to mirror that. So I fully recommend the first reading, and we could go from there if you have any other changes between now and the next policy and personnel committee. But I recommend we approve the first reading, Ms. Lowry.
So Mike, if we have other changes or questions or comments, when do you want to do those? Do you want to do those now? Do you want us to email you? What's the best way?
I think what the best way would be do is for tonight's time, since we're on a little bit of budget, email me the questions, concerns. We can reflect and bring it forward at the next one, because it protects us, because the policy doesn't become official until after the second reading. If you're okay with that, Ms. Lowry.
That's fine.
All right.
Then let's move on.
Okay. Policy 824. Again, we have a policy in place right now. It's a recommended policy we have in place about maintaining professional adult student boundaries. That policy, again, is already in place. What PSBA has done is updated to include the reporting method of using discrimination, sexual harassment, bullying, hazing, violence, and retaliation report form. So again, policy that existed now has a Title IX feature updated to it to allow people to file the report. So what it does is gives us nice admin regulation, nice guideline in case some of these cases come up and which way we should follow. So it helps us build a system. It helps us make aware. And as you know, one of the policies of the 30 or 40 that we have staff review every year, this is one of them. So they're aware of it. And all this really does is just give us a reporting method, updated reporting method, Ms. Lauer.
Okay. And so same thing, if people have comments or questions, to email you, and then, so we'll do first reading tonight, and then we'll address those.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
And the fact that we have them in place and we're just updating them, I feel comfortable where we're at. So I like where we're at, ma'am, if you're okay with that.
Yeah, anybody else have any questions, comments? Okay.
All right.
Next.
Moving on, I don't know if number 3 applies now, Ms. Lyra, and we should talk about it. It applied before 12 noon today. After noon today, we can talk about it. We met as an administrative team, central admin team, and currently our daily sub rate was $90. I was going to ask the committee tonight to consider raising it for $100 to $120 per day due to the pandemic. And then after pandemic, we can always, look if we want to continue it, eliminate it, lower it. What you'll see in Indiana County, some school districts are at $100, some at $90. If we are going to be open 5 days a week, I thought it'd be nice during the pandemic to raise that number to make sure we have adequate subs and to reward them the best we can for coming in, because there's already a limited pool and we want to continue focus on our continuity of education efforts. Now, with the governor's new ruling today, we need time to review that and see if we still want to stay the course. And here's my thought. I'm not asking you to vote on tonight. So what I'd ask the committee to do is have some discussion either now or think about it and get back to us. And we can, my plan would be to add to it, if we want to do it, to the second meeting in August. Again, when we built this proposal, it made sense because we were looking at a 5-day opening. We were looking at making sure we can provide for the continuity of ed for our kids and make sure that we had the most subs we possibly could come to the district. With now being forced to even go to a hybrid or a all remote, this may be a moot point, but we want to take our time, allow you time to think about it as a committee, let us reflect on it. And again, we wouldn't vote tonight at the regular meeting. If this is something we want to move forward with, we would address at the second meeting in August, but it is something we're thinking about. So I'll address any questions or the committee. Rob and I and Justin and Jared can address any questions the committee may have.
So my question was, if we think that if there's a shortage of subs, regardless of how we're providing instruction, there's going to come a time where we need a substitute. So I think considering to raise it makes sense. Is that something we set that pay, not the company you contract with?
That's correct, ma'am. It's our right. It's our right to set the daily pay. They would just be employed through that company. So if the board would like to change the daily rate pay, we can definitely do that. Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
And I do think it makes sense. I think when you're facing more and more of a shortage, it's wise. It makes sense. Now, it may upset other school districts because they may have to raise their price, but at the end of the day, you're seeing a nationwide shortage of subs, and this would help entice them to come be part of our district and provide those services. So, again, it's something to think about, and we want to discuss publicly. And again, we have till the second meeting in August to decide if we want to act upon it, but we at least wanted to bring it to the committee's attention now, ma'am.
Okay. And then you said other schools currently in the county pay between $90 and $100.
Yeah, Jared, I think that's what I'm getting, the pulse what I'm getting. It varies. I don't think everyone's at 90. I think some are at 100. Would you agree with that, Jared, that it varies a little bit across the district? Not incredibly bad, but there is some variation.
Yeah, I would say the lowest is probably 85, and I would say the close or highest is probably 100.
Okay.
And Madam or Miss Lowry, there's nothing that precludes the board from coming back and saying, look, maybe we take it to 110 or 105. You could do that as well. We were just trying to be aggressive in our making sure we have subs on hand to get us through this pandemic. As if we were doing a 5-day opening, and with the Department of Health quarantine isolation guidelines, quality subs would be an asset at this time. But it's still changed, but we at least want to bring it to your awareness.
Well, and I think if you're coming from another part of the county, an additional $5 may not make a difference, but an additional $20 for the day may have you going, you know what, I'll drive an extra 20 minutes, 30 minutes to get there.
Agreed. We
Or,
absolutely agree with you.
I'll take the time to get the training to understand how whatever platform works, and so I can just jump in.
Agreed. Yep, we agree. So again, you don't have to make a decision now, but we would like you to think about it, if that's okay, Madam.
Yep.
Keep going, Madam Vice President. Ms. Lowry, that's okay?
Yep. Anybody else have any questions?
I do. Remind me, how do we pay the company that we contract with for the subs? Is it a flat daily rate, or do they get a percentage of what the subs get? How do we do that?
Jared, do you want to go explain how that works, the payment?
Yes, it's a percentage of the daily rate, which I've already started conversations with them to say, look, this is a temporary thing to help both us and you guys attract subs. Can your fee still be based on the $90 during this time period instead of the 120? So we're kind of going back and forth on that right now.
Okay, excellent. Thank you.
And Ms. Lowry, we had a question. When do you need to decide? We don't need to decide anything. We would like to decide if you want to do it by the second meeting in August, but please let me reiterate, if you say no, we don't have to do it. I don't want you thinking you have to. I want you to think, our option or our thought was hopefully to get more subs during the pandemic in the district. So I want to clarify that because that's a great question. It's a fair question.
What's your thought on availability of subs if we're asking someone to not do face-to-face teaching, but we're asking somebody to do remote?
I think the way, depending on how we build the system and build the schedule, we wouldn't need subs as much as we did if we were open or had a hybrid. But if we're doing remote, we can work around, like similar to what we did last year. And Rob, I'll defer to you, but similar to what we did last year, we basically told parents, hey, I'm out today, I'm sick. I'll be checking my email or get back to you the next day. Where the hitch up is going to become is how does that look like with synchronized learning? So we have some bugs to work out there. And I couldn't tell you we're there yet. But Rob, anything you want to add to that I may have spoke on?
No, I would just say that I think, synchronous learning doesn't have to be synchronous every single day of 180 days. If it's a teacher's going to be out and they leave a lesson for the people or for their students, we don't necessarily have to have a sub for many lessons. So we would treat it by a case-by-case basis. And we could probably save some money that way. We wouldn't need as many.
Okay.
As a former substitute teacher and not being super versed and not a super technology person, are you going to have extra support available for substitutes if they come in and find that they have to teach a synchronous learning lesson online?
Yes, ma'am. We talked about, we haven't actually put it in place yet, but we talked about having a substitute teacher training. Make sure they were all Google savvy by the time they come in. That's going to be hard to maintain if subs are added throughout the year, but we're going to make our best effort to make sure that they're ready to walk into any situation and pick up where the teacher left off. But there is a learning curve there for sure.
Okay, good. Thank you.
And Ms. Lauer, before we move on, Madam Vice President asked a good question, and let me read it to the group and I'll respond. In general, which will teachers teach from home, or do they come into their classrooms and teach remotely? It's my thought and my position at the current time, whether we're hybrid or 100% remote, everyone comes into the buildings, everyone comes into work. We can ensure the social distancing guidelines, we can ensure the safety protocols in place, but as of right now, we are planning towards all staff coming in. So if something happens and we go 100% remote, we are going to plan to come in. And it does a couple of things. One, it allows teachers to continue to work together in small groups with social distancing in place, to plan together, to work together. It makes sense for us. If we have to do some training, some planning, some immediate work or helping, we can do there. And it also provides, I think, the flexibility and stability families are going to need if we're going to do synchronized lessons, because our internet bandwidth will be increased and we won't have to worry about glitches with internet home. And we think it makes sense. So at this point, unless something changed drastically, all teachers would come in to do their work from remotely if the committee's okay with that as well. Rob, Justin, anything you want to add to that before I move on?
Mike,
No, I think
Mike, this is Tom Harlan.
Yes, sir.
I suspect that we're going to have an extraordinary need for substitute teachers this coming year, regardless of the condition that we're in. Recruiting these people is tough to do when we're down 10 slots in the middle of the week. So I would certainly support increasing this pay. The 120 seems like a reasonable number. And we can certainly discuss it, but I would certainly think that we're going to have to do that in order to fill these slots. Thank you.
Yes, sir. And we're starting to agree to that. So again, we got some time, and maybe if you're okay with it, Ms. Lowry, if there's any real objection, let me know prior to the second meeting in August, and we could always, maybe you and I could check base and see where we're at. But that's the target window I'm putting in place right now. If you're okay with that.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I had to step away and take a call, but I will touch base with somebody and get filled in.
No worries. No worries. The next thing I'd like to move on to, again, this one was prior to our newsletter at noon about the governor's mandate. So prior to noon today, we would like the committee to consider hiring 2 elementary teachers as full-time employees. We have lower numbers in kindergarten, and at that point, with regards to kindergarten, we were going to ask the committee to look at hiring 2 more teachers to come in and work, and their roles be purposely undefined, where they'd either be filling in as a sub position, filling in as a remote instructor, or filling in for someone who may be sick. Now that things have changed with regards to the governor's order, we're not sure if we need it or not. We're going to continue to monitor the situation. The good news is the board previously approved these positions, and as you know, we did not eliminate them from our budget, but we wanted to make you aware that possibly come second meeting August, first meeting in September, we may come to you with considering some names of 2 more candidates. One would probably be at the primary level, and one could be at the secondary level, at the intermediate level, to help us address some class size issues. But again, that was when we were under the idea or thought we were coming back 5 days a week. Now that we're not, we need some more time to reevaluate the data, reevaluate the numbers, but we didn't want you to be surprised if we came back with a request for 2 more positions. So what you'll see is, 2 fair criticisms of our plan under the old plan, which was a reopening, was what about subs? And I think we addressed that to recruit more and track more subs. And the second thing was there's some class size issues at the 4 or 5 buildings we want to take care of, as well as the primary building, but that may be a moot point now if we go into hybrid or remote learning. We just need some more time to sort out the data. As you know, we didn't find out until noon today about the change. We need to spend all day tomorrow and the next day sorting it out. But Ms. Lowry, I didn't want the committee to be shocked if we came back and said we needed 2 more, but we're not there right now. So Rob, Justin, Jared, anything you want to add to that?
I don't have anything.
Jared, anything you want to speak to?
No, like you said, it's still in the budget. The board had previously approved it, so we were just kind of reviewing it to see where we're at with them in the future here.
Okay. Ms. Lowry, is there anything you'd like us to address or any questions? Does that make sense?
It actually makes a lot of sense. So let's just wait and see.
Okay. Next one, I'm going to turn over to Justin. As you know, with the shutdown of last year, we had a contract with Dotcom Speech Services to provide some virtual services for our kids. We're going to make a recommendation to the committee that we renew that agreement. And what's nice about it, and Justin can clarify, we only pay for the services we use. So if we have no kids in the services, using the services, there would be no bill for us. Of course, our first plan would be to use our staff to provide those services. But if we were to be inundated, overwhelmed by, running multiple systems or multiple layers, we could kick into this partnership and allow them to help us out and have them help us out by providing some speech services to kids. So again, it is similar to last year. It's a partnership we used well last year, and we'd only use it if there was a need. Justin, can you elaborate though and clarify anything I may have spoken on?
Yeah, I'll just add, thanks, Mike. I'll just add that the support services that are offered through .com can be used on an as-needed basis, and they do they'll do an hourly rate, and the hourly rate is a little bit expensive because they don't have a full-time working person working for us, and it's a little bit over $60 an hour, and that's, if you talk to Tamara, that's about the going rate for an SLP on an as-needed basis. And the reason I really want to look at this as an option is because we do have multiple very high needs cases, and the only way that we would do this is if it was being done virtual. But again, like I said, we do have some cases that are very high needs it will be difficult to get to all of those high needs cases with just our current staff. Again, like Mike said, our plan is at first we're going to use our staff to attempt to get to every service that's in IEPs, and then only use this on an as needed basis.
That sounds good. I mean, I think it's really nice that that's an option, that you're not entering into a contract whether you use it or you don't use it. But obviously, it is a little bit pricier per use.
Yeah,
as a result.
And the parents the students that we did use the .com services for from March until the end of the year were incredibly happy. They were very satisfied with the services. They actually used local SLPs. One was actually a professor at IUP. So yeah, the parents were incredibly happy with it.
It's great.
Okay, Randy, if we could scroll down to number 6. 6, I'd like to turn over to Mr. Cronauer. One thing we did was we wanted to make sure the policy is aware of what some of their employee options are related to COVID-19 and what this Q&A document will be used for. So Jared and Amy O'Neill worked on this, and this is something I believe, got some input from not only our solicitor, but from the association to make sure the association understood the different scenarios that apply here, definitions, and what their options are if something were to happen COVID-19 related in compliance with the law. So with that said, Jared, can you give a nice overview of the document for the board, please?
Yeah, what we kind of did is, of course, over the past couple months, receiving a lot of information from our solicitor, from different HR groups that myself and Amy participate in. And one of those documents, in my opinion, was a very nice flow chart for people to follow to kind of more individualize their current situation as it regards to whether they may need to take time off because of COVID-19. So what we tried to do was try and summarize a couple of those different documents together. Because the flow chart, it was nice, but it was there was a lot of information on it. And when you get a lot of information on a flow chart, you start crossing paths everywhere. So we tried to just kind of spell it out a little bit as to, people could take a look at it and really ask themselves individual questions based on their own situation. And it does follow, like I said, the flowchart, but it kind of, and our hope was to try and simplify it a little bit for people. Like Mr. Vukovic said, we did have the solicitor review it. We did have union leadership, both for our support and IAEA look at it as well. So they both, everybody gave some feedback on it, and what we're hoping is to show it tonight to the committee, and then get it out to employees so they can kind of start taking a look at it and really, trying to see what their situation is, and if it's something that needs addressed. If they're going to need time off, the sheet kind of gives details as to what is available to them as far as, leaves in their own employment contracts, but also the 2 emergency leaves that are now available to people. The emergency paid time off, which is basically 10 days that people have available to them, 10 sick days. That is above and beyond the sick days we currently give them. And then there is the emergency FMLA that people can take if they need to care for their child, because their daycare is either closed and they don't have anywhere else for their kid to go, or the school even closes that their child attends, and they have nobody else to take care of their children. So if there's any questions on it, we can certainly address that. Make any changes. We have not sent it out to employees yet, but we're hoping to do that as soon as possible, so employees can start taking a look at it, and then we can start addressing questions or individual situations at this time with our own employees. Any questions from any of the committee members?
Jared, I took a look at this, and in scenario 2, it is not clear to me what seeking a medical diagnosis means, and what does that look like? How do I demonstrate that I have sought a medical diagnosis?
Okay.
And I'm asking that in part because one of the conversations we had last week, I think, that Dr. Shannon was a part of, he was talking about doing a symptom-informed response rather than asking everybody to go get tested. So I think you're going to get questions as to what does that mean? What does that look like? What do I have to provide on that one? And then the last paragraph in scenario 4, I don't know if we're missing punctuation or if there's a word that's not, like if the word should be if instead of is, but I didn't understand that 4-line sentence. So if you guys can just take a look at it, it was just kind of, you had it, it's right there, yep. So it says, if the cared for person has not been advised by a healthcare provider to self-quarantine, or is the person subject to a governmental isolation order and is not the employee's child, then no ESL or EFMLA is available and the employee should apply for unemployment. I'm not really sure who we're talking about anymore, because the employee could be the person who has to self-quarantine, or they're subject to government isolation order, but they're never going to be their own child. So I think we're missing some kind of punctuation here.
Yeah, no, let me take a look at that.
Thank you. One of the options, if the flowchart was convoluted, is what if you set it up kind of like that survey and had people click buttons for the different scenarios, and it takes you to, okay, here's the decision? Because you were,
yeah, Amy and I we had kind of looked into that.
Yeah, I don't know if that works or if there's a different way to do that with a like a presentation type software, but some people are really good and can read it and follow it, and other people are better with a visual of some sort.
Yep. No, we can maybe create a couple different options for people to follow.
I do think it's really good that you're being clear with folks about what the different scenarios are that you guys thought of, and it could be that there's another scenario out there, and so maybe we, put something like, if your situation doesn't fall into one of these four, here's what you need to do.
Yeah, and I think there's going to be a lot of just individual. I mean, we have 300 and some employees. We could have 100 different individual scenarios that we're really going to have to take on a case-by-case basis.
Right, but I would think the majority of them are going to fall into one of those four categories when you kind of dilute them down. So this is nice. Thank you.
And Jared, maybe you can tighten it up by the end of the week if that's possible. I know it's crazy, especially what happened to us at noon today, but maybe we can get something out to the committee and get this moving so we're ready to get it to teachers before they come back, sir. I'm going to take that as a yes, Jared. All right, Ms. Lowry, can I move on? Can I move on to number 7?
Absolutely.
Okay, 7 was needed prior to noon today. Now that the governor's recommendations came down, I don't know if it's needed as much or it may be already embedded. So just allow us to at least go over it. I'll let Rob go over A in 1 minute, but I would like to address B and C real quick. With under our original plan of having a full reopening, hybrid for some and cyber learning for some, there's going to be obviously increased planning load, workload amongst the teachers. I don't think anyone should profit in the middle of a pandemic off this, but I do think our teachers deserve time to plan for this. And what we are going to propose for is either half-day Fridays or entire Fridays off to give people the time. Now that the governor came down and we fall under the moderate category, it looks like depending on what model we pick, we can now achieve that. And what we were looking at that point was maybe mornings would be time for teachers to prep and plan, because I think truly they need that. And then afternoons would be check-ins, tutoring, and one-on-one support. It's changing now because of the governor's recommendation. We have to figure out what that works like. For example, when we surveyed our families, I think, and Rob can clarify, I think it was pretty overwhelming. They liked the 2 days on, 3 days off model. So half the kids would come on Monday, Tuesday, other half would come on Thursday, Friday, and Wednesday would be remote for the entire district, allow teachers to prep, plan, and connect. I don't know if it's necessary now. We have to vet this out, and I really don't want to ask for anything right now because, again, we have to vet all these options out tomorrow. Our team's meeting tomorrow of teachers, about a dozen or two teachers, as well as administration, continue now going through these options and vetting them out. We'll come back with a better recommendation. But again, when I wrote this last week, that's what we wanted. Now that the governor's edict came down at noon today, it may have changed. But Rob, can you give the committee a little bit of update where we at with our synchronized learning efforts? I know I told them we're meeting tomorrow, and now we have to plan for the hybrid model or full remote model. But is there anything else that you want to let the committee be advised of?
Yeah, we had a really good first meeting. There were a lot of teachers, our 24 teachers, I think, that were on the call. We looked at the different options we had. We're pretty confident that at the elementary level, we're going to be able to dedicate an entire teacher to each grade level for the number of kids that are going online. So you'll have all of the kids that are in first grade, say, who've chosen synchronous learning will have the same teacher who will only teach those virtual kids. That teacher will break those kids into small groups, so it's much more manageable online, meet with them at set times throughout the day, and provide them practice activities in between. We also believe that we can rotate our specials just like we would if we do that. The special schedule is already built so that the special teacher would rotate into each first grade classroom on a certain day of the week. We don't see any reason to abandon that. We may have to just, make sure that whatever lesson is being taught can be done virtually at that time. At secondary is a little bit trickier, and we talked about this before. We're looking at schedules to see if there's a way that we can free up a period for certain groups, but the survey just closed today, actually, is when we closed it. We gave people the weekend to get through it. So the principals are going to have to break that down and look at their numbers and see if some of those classes are small enough now that we can free up a period and give a dedicated virtual time to the core subjects or not. If not, the committee was very confident that we could Google kids into the classroom. We assigned them seats in the class, just like the traditional model, but instead of the child physically coming to the school, they would attend via the Google Classroom. That's where there's going to be some real increase in need for planning. At the elementary level, a lot of those teachers have never used the Google Classroom before, and we're going to ask them to have a Google Classroom that is maintained, that the materials that they would create would be posted on that to provide flexibility and stability to families who are forced to quarantine, or to be flexible and responsive to the needs as they come up with COVID. And at the secondary level, they're going to have to take everything that they do and really create it in two worlds. I think they're going to get good at it relatively quickly, but they still are going to need some time to recreate a lot of materials, all of their tests, and numerous other things. So, but they're confident they can do it. They're confident they can do a great job. I'm pretty confident that they're going to do a job. Our next meeting is tomorrow with both the elementary. We broke it down into smaller subcommittees now. We have an elementary team meeting first, and then a secondary team meeting after that. And we're really going to now look at not only, we have to look at what the hybrid model will look like and see if we can maintain the synchronous model throughout the hybrid plan. So we will report back as soon as we know.
And Ms. Lowry, one thing we do want to apologize to everyone in advance is there will be many more emails and correspondence coming out in the next several days. For us tonight to speak about what it may look like, we're not there yet, and that would just send a premature hysteria in place. We know this. The governor made a recommendation. It'd be my advice for us to follow the governor's recommendation. And now we need time to let my team work the rest of this week and see if we can get something. Our goal is to try to have a nice framework done by the end of this week, if not, and go in early next week. I would like then to talk about bringing another committee meeting together for those who want to join, talk about it publicly so everyone knows what's going on, and then we go from there. We're moving as fast as we can. We had about a 3-hour meeting today with the association, reviewing the governor's some questions they had, but most importantly, reviewing the governor's recommendations. So we're planning as fast as we can. I sent a letter out to families apologizing for the inconvenience, but I wanted them, as soon as we knew, I wanted them to know. So that correspondence has been sent out via email as well as social media. But we got some work to do. And the one thing I will, please, I don't want to be arrogant when I say demand or defend. The one thing I would ask you for consideration is I do think some great deal of timing and planning is going to be needed for the teachers to make this, have this done well. I think the one area we need to grow in is the synchronized learning. And they've been nothing but incredible, saying, look, let's go meet the moment. Let's go get after it and let us figure out. And the only thing we ask in return is time. Rob and Justin, would you agree with that based on your meetings? Was that fair? Is that a fair statement?
Yeah, that's pretty much it. I mean, we still have some bugs to work out at the secondary with some singleton classes that are just not going to play nicely with our plan. But so there might be a few people who, the planning time won't work. But other than that, there should be few exceptions to that rule that will address most of the people.
So we'll turn it over to committee and see if there's any questions. Again, this was written before what happened, the correspondence we got at noon today, but there's still it's still applicable to what we're facing now.
Like, I just want to thank the teachers and you all in the administration building for really looking at and listening to what community members have asked for, that they really do want synchronous learning opportunities and options. And, we were able to kind of move towards that very quickly. And as things continue to change, I think people just need to be patient and kind and flexible and understand that, we really are doing the best that we can. But I also think that for some of our students, this is the best way that they're going to be able to learn. So it's going to just be a balance.
It is, Ms. Lowry. It's going to be I feel bad for the parents because it feels like every time we communicate, only a day or two later, something changes, but we can't control that. What we can control is our response. And I think we owe it to our families to keep them aware, keep them informed as much as we know so they can plan accordingly. And they're going to have to plan, and I feel terrible, but at this point, the governor made a recommendation. If you ask me my opinion, we should adhere to that. I just wish that recommendation would have came in June. non-office.
Right.
So, does that clarify number 7? If the committee is okay with it, Ms. Lowry?
Yeah. Anybody else have any questions, concerns, comments? All right, we're moving on.
The last one you may think is somewhat silly, but I would like to have a conversation. The next one, with a conversation with the board, at the committee on. And I don't know how true this is, and I don't know all the facts around it. But I'm asking the committee not to make a decision, but to think about having a little bit more of a relaxed dress code for staff this upcoming school year. And the reason why is a lot of gentlemen may wear suits, or ladies may wear suits or professional dress that only things may be dry cleaned. And like for me, I know this sounds, you may think less of me, but I only take my dry cleaning once or twice a week, or once a week down to get taken care of. And I worry about if the virus can't stay on clothes, and if, would it be easier that we have a little bit more relaxed dress code for the beginning of the school year? So when teachers get home, they can go home, change right away, and throw those clothes in the wash and take care of them, rather than waiting a couple of days to take it to dry cleaners or things along that line. Now, I'm not going to let people wear shorts. So please don't think that. But we could do Indiana Pride Days every day, or just, I want to give staff some flexibility. So some schools are allowing teachers to wear scrubs. If they want to do that, they can. But I also don't have a problem with teachers dressing down a little bit. Please, it would be in good taste. So don't get me wrong there. But I just, I wanted to throw that out there and get a pulse from the committee. I think it makes sense to me, but I don't know if I'm right. So I'll defer to the committee and any thoughts on that. And I know it's an odd request I had, but
I don't think it's an odd request at all. And I think that something like scrubs, or something like,
Sweatpants.
No, not sweatpants, not leggings. Something that is appropriate, that, if you were to have to interact face to face with a parent, you would be okay and be comfortable, and they would still feel like you were respecting their time in that meeting. I don't think suits are necessarily a must, but I do think we need to trust that people can make good decisions. And if they're not making good decisions on what they're wearing, then it needs to get addressed pretty quickly. A lot of teachers in other places are doing scrubs because it's easy, for a variety of reasons, right? Laundering, all of that. I think collared shirts for men make sense. I don't think it makes sense to wear a suit and a tie.
okay. And
I think for women, I don't expect them to wear a dress or a suit. It just is not practical, given the other considerations on what we're being asked to do so that people are safe.
And that's our point. Like, I don't even know if it makes sense. We thought it made sense. We at least thought to bring it to the committee, because we're just trying to make people feel as comfortable and safe as possible. And like, I know, for example, some schools, like in my previous employer, we had a bed bug outbreak, and every day I get home, I'd go, take my stuff to a dry cleaner, get it washed. And like, it's a little paranoid on my part, but I think it's a consideration. I think it's a kindness, and I think it's a flexibility that may go a long way. I don't know if it's needed, but I feel like it doesn't hurt, as long as we don't violate the code, and we won't.
Mike, this is Tom Harley.
Yes, sir.
When we looked into this earlier, it seems like decades and decades ago, we didn't find that there was much of a dress code to begin with.
Yeah.
And so I don't think this has to come to the board as much as you can put out the word. We had some teachers who were using sweatpants as their everyday, but we didn't have anything in the dress code that would prevent it. So I think you can relax the dress code by putting out what's Trump using, the edicts, and do it that way. I don't think this has to come to the board. The dress code we currently have in place does not demand ties and suit coats and dresses.
Yeah, and I agree. And that's why we just put it as non-agenda, just so you know. I didn't, because I also know some of your parents in the district. I didn't want you to show up at a meeting and say, hey, I have a hard time getting Rob dressed up now. I don't want you seeing Rob on the floor and you get upset. So I just wanted to make sure that you guys are okay. You are okay with it, understood the rationale, if that's okay.
Yep.
The last one I have for you, Ms. Lowry, and the committee is, I just want to spend a couple minutes talking about the governor's recommendations, let you know what we think our next steps are, and go from there. So around noon today, we got an email from PDE titled Determining Instructional Models During the COVID-19 Pandemic, Recommendations for Pre-K to 12. It was also in the Indiana Gazette, an article about that. And I think some of it is in response to a lot of advocacy for asking for direction. And I think that's what the response was. Here's where I'm at. I can't look you in the eye and tell you not to follow the governor's recommendation. I understand it's not a requirement, it's a recommendation. But now that he came forward with a recommendation, I have to urge you to consider that and look at that. And I can't mislead you on that. Now, does it go against all the work we built and planning efforts we did? It does, but I can't worry about that. And I just have to move the team forward. And we're meeting tomorrow to continue that next step. The way I broke down the spreadsheet that PDE provided us is Indiana County falls in that moderate risk level, and that requires to either do remote or hybrid. And if you look at that, 63% of the counties in PA fall into the moderate severe category, with one school district being in severe. And there's a couple things we have to work out. Number one, do we want to do remote or hybrid? And then what does hybrid look like? So that's one thing we have to discuss. The second thing this committee and the board's going to have to discuss, not tonight, but we're going to have to get to it. The second big thing is we're going to have to discuss is how long is that duration of this plan going to be? For example, the PD's guideline says it could be 14 days or up to 9 weeks. For the sake of our families and the sake of planning efforts, I would probably say that we need to make sure that whatever we decide, we stick to a predetermined number, whether it's 45 days or 30 days, so families can plan accordingly, right? So those are things that we're going to work out. Those are some more communications that are going to come out to families. But I did want to show you that it's not just us. And please just be mindful of the fact that I use the word counties, not school districts. So I don't know how many school districts are in each one of those counties, but that's the percent of counties that fall into that category. So we have some work to do on our level. We have some work to do that we got to get done, but that's where we're at. The information just came at noon today. We're responding by convening like Rob said earlier, elementary and a secondary team tomorrow. And we're going to start going through these questions. Again, there's two big questions. What do we want hybrid to look like? What type of shape or model the hybrid is going to look like, as well as the duration. I'm probably going to come back to you and say whatever version we pick of the remote/hybrid, whatever that looks like, whatever definition we put to that, I'm probably going to come back and say that we go to 45 days. 45-day placement so families can plan, we can plan, and it's not so topsy-turvy. I think if you go to 7 days or 2-week model, that gets too hard to manage. I don't know when that clock would start, and it gets a little crazy. I think I saw a question from Mr. Kerr about the model. You can go to the website. I can show you where it based. Actually, Randy, do you mind if I take control? Let me see if I can pull it up. Don't give me 1 second, Randy. Keep showing your screen until I can find mine. What I could do is I could show you the spreadsheet that it's pulling from, and you can look from there. And remember, there's filters. There's two big filters we're looking at: incident rate per 1,000 residents and percent positivity rates. What got us, in my opinion, in the red is the percent positivity rate. And Miss Cinda and Miss Lowry, I don't want you to speak for you, but I'd ask you to be either rebuke or support my claim that what I heard from Dr. Shannon and when we talked to Dr. Lubel is they're taking a very conservative approach to testing, and they're only testing those individuals who may have symptoms. So what that does is you're very specific and targeted on who you're testing. That could naturally increase the positivity rate, where other counties may be testing everyone, and that number, your percent positive, could be lower. I'm not saying it's a flawed theory or it's a good theory. I'm just saying that number, percent positivity rate, is what got us in that moderate level. And I could show you a spreadsheet and I could show you the website, and I'll do that in a minute. But that's where we're at, and that's where we're coming from. That's what we got at noon today. Rob, Justin, Jared, do you want to clear, if you don't mind, you could pick up the conversation while I go look for the website real quick, and I could pull it up in a minute.
So I think one of the things that's important to remember is that when we had that conversation with Dr. Shannon, he indicated that, again, like I said before, that they were approaching this on a symptom-based response. And so they're not testing everybody and anybody, and they're also not doing multiple tests. And the reason for that is because of the capacity to get results back quickly, because if you don't get the results within 24 to 48 hours, they're useless. And also not wanting to use all those supplies up and have them then be scarce for people who need them. So I think the hospital is making some wise choices in how they're approaching this. And it was good to work with them so that they could help inform our plan on how we were encouraging in our health and safety plan folks to determine what it was that they needed to do if they had symptoms, if they had been exposed, if they didn't have symptoms, whichever.
Rob, is there anything you wanted to go over?
No, she's exactly right. That's where we are. Remember, Mike, we failed in both categories. I think over the last 7 days, our cases per 100 were somewhere around 30, or 100,000 were somewhere around 30, and the threshold the governor set was 10 or less. And then our positivity rate was 7.9, and the threshold they set was 5% or less. So a positivity rate. So I think we fail on both metrics. So it looks like we're going to have to follow the recommendation, to protect the district and comply with the guidelines. So, that's where we are, and we're just going to have to go back to the drawing board yet again and figure something out here.
And I am going to show up the PDE. Can everyone see the email site from PDE on your screen?
Yes,
so
sir.
what you see here, I just want to call out right here. You can see real quick that this page was created on August 10th. It was created at noon, to be precise, is when I got the email. If you look up here to level of community transmission table, that's the Excel spreadsheet I'll pull up in a minute. And then if you go down here, they'll go through their metrics, their model that we're using. So as Rob said, we fell within both of these, and that is instituting recommended model of blended or fully remote. And what I could do, board, is I can send this out to you here later. But if you click on the spreadsheet, it'll pull up all the counties in Pennsylvania. So that's how we did our math, and that's how we looked at it. And you'll notice they start with the most recent week, then the past week in July, and that's how they're going through there. So that's how we came to that determination, and I wanted to make you aware of that as well, if that makes sense, Ms. Lowry.
Yep, it makes a lot of sense. Thank you.
So again, next steps, the team's going to pull together with the teachers and administrators. We're going to start looking at this, vetting this out. We have more communications that we're going to have to go out to families here in the very near future, but we're going to deal with in which we are presented. It was presented at noon. We're on it, and we're going to get more information out to our parents because they deserve that. And we're working to clarify some things and fix some things. And are we going to have it tonight ready at 6:23? No, or not. Are we going to make sure we work like heck to get it done as fast as we can to make sure it makes sense, it's understood by all, and equitable? We are. And you have our word. We'll do that, Ms. Lowry.
Well, I think it's important to say that, things obviously changed drastically at noon today. And so all the details aren't worked out because there's other things that also play into this now that this is the recommendation. And, we'll just stay tuned.
That's it. And I mean, and please, I don't want to say that's it because I think it's dismissive, but that's where we're at, right? And that's what we know. So I don't have the time to sulk about it or be upset about it. What I do have to do is pull the team together and get this done and get it out to our families as soon as we build a nice plan. But now we got to build a plan that makes sense. And, again, here's our goals. We're trying to make something that's safe for everyone, but is consistent. There's a good framework. There's stability, there's routine, and that we address the synchronized learning part. So that's where we're at. And everyone's working together. We'll meet the moment, but it's just the information is going to come quick and all going. And I apologize for that, but we think our families need to know.
Mike, this is Tom again. How does this ruling, this recommendation affect extracurricular and sports activities?
Yeah, I don't know, sir. What we're doing now is a result of this recommendation. We're going to fall back to our yellow phase and make sure that groups are no larger 25 in a group. So this wouldn't affect many sports except for band and football. But I think what we're going to lean on, we have to discuss a little bit more, is possibly have them go in pods of no more than that 25, just to err on the side of caution. I'm waiting for what the PLA, what decision and recommendation they make out in the next 2 weeks. Now, selfishly, Mr. Harley, I wish they would only took a week to make a decision. I think bumping out 2 weeks is really cutting it close. But at this point, I feel comfortable with our health and safety plan approved. And as long as we make the modification to allow them, not to go in 25 a group, if we want to stay the course, you can. I know that I'll defer to Rob. I know the subcommittee met. He can clarify or anything that I may have misspoke on. But at this point, we're just patiently waiting to see what the PLA says. My hope is, I hope they don't pass this down to the conferences, and I hope they don't pass it down to individual schools. I hope they make a decision, but that's a personal preference. Rob, Ms. Lowry, Ms. Cinda, is there anything that you want to add to from your subcommittee meeting today that I may have misspoke or you need to clarify on?
No, that's it. We met this morning, and as of this morning, well, of course, the landscape was much different at 8 a.m. this morning than it was at noon this afternoon. But we agreed as a team to wait and hold the course, see what PIAA comes up with. They meet next Friday, and Mr. Luzanik believes that that's going to be their decision day, their D-Day, where they're going to make a recommendation one way or the other. Our plan is simply for conditioning, and since they delayed the start of football and heat conditioning or heat acclimation, we're okay there. We have the luxury of being able to wait until the next board meeting to really make a decision. But that being said, the big Power 5 conferences in college athletics met last night. They're meeting again today, and we are expecting announcements very soon, if they haven't made it official, that they're going to cancel fall sports, and I think that might start a domino effect here pretty soon. So we're going to do what's best. We're going to do everything we can to make sure our kids have every opportunity to participate. And if we can't do it, then we'll surrender to that when the time comes.
So just to clarify, sports are able to have voluntary type practices during this time period until the 24th.
That's correct. Mr. Luzanik is rescheduling the few matches that were supposed to take place before that time.
Rob, clarify again. We're probably slipping into the mandatory practices for a team. When would that occur under this new schedule?
Well, we decided we made a decision as the subcommittee to make sure that no coach is making anything mandatory at this time. That we were communicating that all practice participation was going to be voluntary until such time as we officially say, okay, that sports is a go or sports is on hold.
Okay, thank you for the clarification.
And just to clarify, sports and others, not just sports.
That's correct. If I said sports, I apologize. That is
It's all right.
all after school activities, all activities that occur outside the normal school day.
Correct.
So that's where we're at, Miss Lowry and committee.
All right.
It's 6:30. I don't want to rush you. If there's any more questions, we'll take it. But if not, we can move to the exec session.
Sounds good to me. Thank you all.
All right. See you, everyone.